the Theosophical origins of YACOUB. Yeah, what's going on, party people? The place to be. I go by the name of the BK Apologist, transmitting all the way live. New York is the city, Brooklyn is the borough. What's good? What's popping with everybody? Happy post Thanksgiving. I hope everybody ate to their heart's content. And of course, today is even better because the leftovers are always better, right? So I hope everybody had a chance to. And yes, I understand the origins of the holiday can be a bit problematic for many of us, right? But the idea of getting together with family, friends, and giving thanks is always a good thing, right? And that's what we focus on when we get together and break bread. So, JP, so you going to get the sales, bro? Black Friday? You know what I mean? Or you just celebrating your blackness? I don't know. With you, it could go either way. So, I have with me a gentleman from the other side of the Mason Dixon, good friend, one of the sharpest tools in anyone's kit. He goes by the name of MJ Jackson. What's going on, sir?
Hat tip to you and to the panel, and to all the wonderful people who are hanging with us on Black Friday. I celebrate my blackness today. I might go see what they got out there at the pawn shop. But yeah, that's about as good as it gets.
And of course, we have JP. We got Adrian Jones. We got my man Built for Speed. Um, yeah, man, this is good. This is good. As always, if you have not already, please like, share, and subscribe. Tell a friend to tell a friend. That's him again. And if you like how it goes down at the BK Apologist, you can show your support via PayPal. Or if you want to be a monthly supporter of BK, you could become a Patreon where you get an assortment of goodies to enhance your personal Bible study. So today we're gonna jump in and you know, a lot of times when you see MJ here is because we're jumping in to some of these quote unquote black religions. And and I don't be looking for it, but in my research, and you start, lifting the veil, you start seeing a lot of things within these quote unquote black religions that aren't very black, actually, to be honest with you. And one of the things that we're going to be discussing today is the theosophical origins of Yakub, the big head scientist. Now, you're probably wondering, some of us are probably wondering, what in the world is this, right? Well, um, we're talking about this thing called the Supreme Wisdom Lessons, a neglected but foundational text in American Muslim histories. The Supreme Wisdom Lessons appear in Nation of Islam tradition as a series of question and answer examinations between nation founder Fard Muhammad and his student Elijah Muhammad. The lessons were used as a process of initiation for new members who committed excerpts to memory before receiving more of the text, eventually memorizing the entire document. All right, this is from, I'm sorry, Mr. White Man, These Secrets That You Are Not Permitted to Learn, The Supreme Wisdom Lessons and Problem Book by Michael Muhammad Knight. And even though it had its origin with the Nation of Islam, many of us have come to know the wisdom lessons because of the nations of God and Earth, the five percenters, as taught by Clarence 13X. Now, MJ, what kind of influence or presence does the NOI or the Nation of God and Earth have down south, if any?
Bean pies of newspapers.
Okay, all right.
I almost made a bean pie for for Thanksgiving, but I decided against it. But no,
I
I
heard
mean
them bean pies is good. I heard them joints is good.
that's what I heard. I was about to take that step, but I mean, we down here in the South. to be perfectly honest, if you can look at the quote unquote evolution of David Banner, that's about the impact that these type of teachings have had on a lot of us down here in the South. Now, David Banner will tell you that he was conscious the whole time, but the dude from Mississippi, okay, that lets you know the time that it took for some of this information to get down here to the South. Of course, Texas is a little bit more progressive with Dallas and Houston,
Right,
and so the teachings may have been down there, but this is a phenomenon that's um, greatly associated with the Northeast, the East Coast.
right,
Um, I mean, you can also look at the bull weevil, and I think Albert Rabateau talks about the diversity that Black people were experiencing when they moved from the South to the North during the Great Migration, things like that, and they begin to be exposed to these differing religions, differing viewpoints, and things like that. And then, of course, like I said, just based off of my experience and what I've observed, um, we kind of seeing some of the information travel down here through rap, things like that, through the influence and the growth of the Nation of Islam as well.
right.
But yeah, it took a little bit of time to get down here. That's basically what I'm saying.
Okay, and it's funny you should mention hip hop because yeah, if you was into '90s hip hop, especially in New York, a lot of these rhymes were laced with allusions towards these 5% nations. For example, Ladybug, Mecca of Digital Planets, right? Why? That's most asked by 85, right? She's getting that from the lessons. You also have a fear for the 85 who don't got a clue, right? That Method Man and Old Dirty from Rawhide, Return to the 36 Chambers, right? We have to hear my people been lost for over 400 years and they tried this mystery God, and all they got was hard times. Brand Nubian, ain't no mystery, in God we trust. Uh, I'm making Devil's Coward to the Caucasus Mountains, right? Wu Tang Clan, the mystery of chess boxing. I know we got some Wu fans in the audience, right? So, uh, and then very recently on Jesus Lord Part Two, Deluxe with the Locks, as the DOJ confirmed Ezekiel's will, Lord, I could change the world like YACOUB with two pieces of steel. And this is part of the 5% lesson slash Nation of Islam lessons that we're going to focus on. The origin of YACOUB. You know, if you've been around any of the NOI or 5% rhetoric, you know that they talk a lot about YACOUB because YACOUB basically gives us the alleged origin of the white man, right? So, are you familiar with the story of YACOUB, MJ?
Yes.
Mm,
Yes, I'm familiar with the story of Yakub. I encountered it through message to the black man, basically.
mm,
So, but yes, if you've studied or come into contact with people pushing NOI doctrine, yeah, you're gonna meet the big head scientist, Mr. Yakub.
right, right. So with that, uh, the NGE origin story concerns a quote big-headed mad scientist named Yaqub. Yaqub lived 6,000 years ago at a time when black people were the only race on Earth and lived in a technological utopia that is often associated with the lost continent of Atlantis. Buck describes Yaqub's ascent. Born in the year 8400, Yaqub discovered the law of magnetism at the age of 6. As polar opposites attract, magnetism inspired Yaqub to create a race that was the polar opposite of blacks. This is from Ain't No Spook God, Religiosity and the Nation of God and Herbs by Pamela Andrews. By so doing, he would create a human magnetic force field. When the book of Genesis says, "Let us make man," these were Yaqub's words, not God's. Yaqub accomplished this by means of the nefarious birth control law designed to favor light skinned offspring over the black skinned infants. Yaqub forbade black couples to marry, but if one partner was brown in color, they could. If they gave birth to a black child, doctors were to put a needle in its brain and feed it to a wild animal or give it to the cremator. Within 200 years, no more black babies were born. After Yaqub's death at age 150, this process of favoring lighter skinned offspring continued. After 600 years, this process resulted in the creation of the white race. Ultimately, Yaqub's experiment went awry. White people became aggressive and tried to overtake their creators. They were then banished from the lands of the original man, escaping to live for 2,000 years in caves in the hills of West Asia, the place they now call Europe, right? For Muhammad, from that book that you've read, MJ. So, right, that's the basic premise of the origin, the ethnic origin of the white man. Now, let me see what my man here says. With so many ethnocentric pseudo historical cults that come from New York, there needs to be a documentary titled "The Heresies of Harlem." Man, listen, facts. For some reason, there's something in the water in my neck of the woods that, but not just Harlem, just New York. I mean, the Millerites, right? Seventh Day of Adventism, Jehovah Witnesses, they all had their origin in New York. So these are facts. These are facts. MJ.
Well, I have a theory about why white folks started cults and things like that. But that's neither here nor there for today. We'll get into that another day.
You're a funny guy.
Uh, but yeah, I mean, Harlem or New York. I mean, that was the place where the what I would deem to be the Black Enlightenment
Right, the
took
Renaissance.
place. The Renaissance,
Right, right,
and then the church did the best that they could do. They probably could have did a little bit better, incorporating um, more head knowledge. And what I mean by that is the Bible tells us to that the greatest commandment is to love God not only with all your strength, not only with all your soul, but also with all your mind.
right.
Um, we did good um, in those other two areas, but we could have did better taking care of the the life of the mind. And this is not just a black issue, but I think that fundamentalism also suffered from this as well, just turning itself off to dealing with the world.
Mm,
And as a result, what you see when that happens is cults pop up, and you also see the world try to look for solutions in things other than what God has revealed. Um, but with the whole Yakub story, Yakub is supposed to be a black dude, and so we got to
yep.
ask ourselves a question: why is this dude favoring or setting up a system to favor light skinned people? Seems, I mean, I don't know how this story is helpful. Maybe this story is supposed to be helpful for the self esteem of the cult members that Elijah Muhammad and Farad Muhammad were grooming to kind of paint the black man as the original race, or the black man as the mother and father of history and humanity. But I mean, it's just it's silly. And then we got to ask for the empirical evidence, or I mean, were the members supposed to take this on faith and because Muhammad said so? I mean, you
Right,
got to ask questions like that.
right. My man put I forgot about this quote. In the hood is 5%ers, but something must have got in us because all of us turned to sinners. That's the AZ. Yeah, yeah. That's the joint right there. But to your point, right? Like, why? Why concoct this story? How is it beneficial? And we're gonna look at some of the source material behind this story to see if we can make some kind of sense of it. So the Yakub origin story permeates all aspects of NGE racial understanding. It is the basis for the understanding of black people as the original race and for the teaching that the white man is the devil. Both fundamental tenets of the theology of the 5% nation, and perhaps the clearest indicator that the NGE demonstrates the presence of religious creed as defined by Albanese. Right? So the reason for the story is to showcase that the white man is the devil. Which is funny, right? Because even calling him the devil, you're still giving him supremacy, right? Because the white man just can't be a bad guy. He has to be the bad guy, right? But anyway, the lessons offer a narrative of racial difference, which undergoes elaboration in later works of Elijah Muhammad, that traces the origins of the white race, identified as, quote, the colored man, in a reversal of U.S. racial vocabulary to a eugenics regime led by scientist YACOUB, later spelled YACOUB, whose name corresponds to the Arabic equivalent of Jacob. Yaqub, quote, manufactured the devil on the island of Pilan, which the lessons explain as Patmos, where John received the book of Revelation. Yaqub selected followers who were healthy, strong, and good breeders, and gave his people the law on birth control to be enforced while manufacturing the devil. So you got to remember, there's, 1920s, 1930s, Detroit, there is a lot of scientific racism applied to black and brown folk. So what they're doing here is role reversal, and they did their own version. This is the black version of scientific racism. That somehow the white race was concocted and manufactured by black people. So they're just a byproduct of black people, right? So therefore they're lesser than black people, right? So let's continue. In addition to the enormously popular and powerful ideology of eugenics, the lessons account of white origin also overlaps with theosophical ideas about race and human evolution. While reading as an inversion of the trajectory for theosophists, humanity passed through a sequence of root races, each representing a stage of human advancement. From each root race, a subrace would emerge to produce the next root race. While H.P. Blavatsky's narrative of racial origin privileges the Aryan race as the fifth and presently highest race in the evolutionary sequence, that will conclude with the future sixth and seventh races. So again, so this is a response in a sense to theosophy, right? They're getting this idea from theosophy that Blavatsky created this root race system, which of course the Aryan, the white race, is the superior race. And what the Yaqub story does is turn it on its head. It's actually a polemical response to theosophy. Um, MJ, your thoughts on this craziness?
Everywhere we look when we're dealing with the origins, whether it be of Cometicism or the lodge, um, there's always these theosophists. It's either Helena Blavatsky or um, some of the other Jesus mythers, those
Hermes
sermons.
Trismegistus and
Yeah,
right.
like I wonder why. But this is interesting. And so essentially what these guys are doing is they're using the same tools of racism and ethnocentrism to fight against racism and ethnocentrism, when the truth of the matter is, the real answers and the real ways to fight are found in the biblical worldview, such as that God is the creator of the human race, one race, and that race is a social construct.
Hmm.
Um, no such thing as different races, which is why this is pseudoscience at its root.
Hmm.
And it's funny to me because I think you read a couple of portions where it talked about Genesis, and then YACOUB was on the Isle of Patmos. Well,
Right.
that lets you know that Elijah Muhammad and Farad Muhammad were using what black people knew, which was the Bible.
Mm,
Now, probably we're not engaging in apologetics, but we did read our Bibles. So what they were doing was using or contextualizing using what we knew to spread this. I mean, I guess you can call it a feel good story, but I guess one of the best things to do when engaging in apologetics discourse is just to ask questions. You don't have to immediately just try to disprove anything, but you can ask for the evidence of this, the empirical evidence, other written evidence that could corroborate what's being said,
hmm.
versus somebody just pulling this type of stuff up out of their butt.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, it gets worse though, bro. Like, watch this. Watch this. All right. C.W. Leadbeater and Annie Besant elaborate on Blavatsky's narrative of racial origins. In their 1913 collaboration, Man, Whence, How, and Whither, a record of clairvoyant investigation that readily enters into conversation with the lessons. According to Leadbeater and Besant, Manu, quote, Lord of the Moon, embarked on a deliberate breeding project to, quote, shape for his race on Earth, which would become the Aryan people. To this end, he chose followers, quote, like looking over a flock of sheep and choosing the most suitable. Right. So this was already in place. This was being taught prior to these quote unquote wisdom lessons. This origin story of Yakub. Right. So they're getting this stuff from Manu, Lord of the Moon. Right. Leadbeater and Basant unfold a complex account of Manu's generations of followers and their respective fortunes until reaching the particularly successful fifth Atlantean subrace, which was, quote, isolated from the world in general by a belt of sand, which could only be crossed by caravans carrying with them plenty of water, and there was only one way across it with grass and water, about where Mecca now stands. Manu exiled his, quote, least desirable types, unquote, and, quote, preserved unmixed within this belt of desert the most promising. Ultimately, this population dispersed across the globe. The lessons flip the narrative. Yaqub does not monitor or regulate his followers' breeding to create progressively superior generations and assist human spiritual evolution, but to achieve a regression in consciousness with the production of a weak and wicked devil. So Farad takes these theosophical writings of Ledbetter and Besant, which of course they get from Blavatsky, about this root race narrative and Lord Manu, King of the Moon, and instead of making a breeding project to make advancement in other races, Yaku decides to do the opposite, a regression of consciousness, right? The production of weak and wicked. So for some reason, this black scientist decided that he wanted to make a weaker version of humanity, which of course goes, is very similar to the scientific racism of its day. MJ, your thoughts on that?
I mean, just listening and reading this stuff, um, man, slavery and this is no time to have a pity party or anything like that. I'm not at all saying get on some poor me type crap, but there was really a number done on black folks to make them vulnerable to this type of chicanery. Um, and I truly believe that the gospel has the answers um, that we need as a people. It has the answers ethically, it has the answers politically speaking, and it has the answers epistemologically and ontologically. It has all of the answers that we need. And looking to resort to um, racism like this. It's just it's silly.
Mhm.
It's really silly, and it's insulting to the intelligence of black people. And so how there can still be a nation of Islam today and still be people peddling this, I'm just shocked. But it
Well, as long
yeah.
as people are longing for identity and purpose, there's always going to be coach that's ready to answer those two questions, like who am I and what do I do,
And
right?
I think that it's more human beings are complex. You know, it's more to it like you just said, there's desires, there's hopes, there's dreams that are also at play along with the intellectual facts that are being marshaled. And so there's more to it than just piling up facts.
Right. And here's some more facts. um, Read in the context of 1930s Detroit, the lessons reflect a setting in which the fundamental argument of eugenics discourses that a nation's intellectual and physical health could and must be protected through a rigorous vetting and regulation of its breeders had enjoyed the privilege of mainstream science and presidential endorsement, while Yaqub's biblical identity could appear fluid for Elijah Muhammad. Farad Muhammad, claiming mastery of Arabic and the Quran, is likely to have named the ancient eugenicist after the biblical Jacob, who frequently appeared in eugenics literature. All right, so remember, we're looking for source material for the Yaqub story. You know, we saw that Ledbetter and Besant and Blavatsky was one of the source documents. Here's another source document for the Yaqub story, this eugenic literature that uses Jacob, of all people, from the Bible. Right? The lessons speak to their era's prominent assumptions about human societies as breeding labs. Moreover, these ideas of racial hygiene also inform esoteric discourses. Theosophist intellectuals such as Blavatsky, Besant, and Leadbeater integrated contemporary ideas about race and civilizational progress into their trajectories of human metaphysical advancement. The lessons, 5% lessons, share theosophical assumptions of meaningful linkages between racial essences, regulated breeding, and metaphysical destinies. While engaging these linkages from a starting point of black godhood and Islam as a nation with no birth record. All right. So this story and the majority of the 5% lessons, the Nation of Islam lessons, a lot of their origins come from these theosophical assumptions, these source material, right? Um, and Lost Found Muslim lesson number 2, questions 21 to 40, deal with the origins, nature, and promised end of Yaqub's grafted devil. When Yaqub was 6 years old, while playing with two pieces of steel, he discovered one piece had magnetic in it and the other piece did not. When he learned that the piece with magnetic attracted the piece that did not have magnetic in it, then he told his people when he was old enough to make a nation that would be unlike, and he would teach them trick knowledge, and they would rule for 6,000 years. So this is a very petty scientist, Yaqub, right? uh, what was the relationship between Yaqub's quote determined idea, his later vow at the age of 6 that he will someday create a devil, and his discovery of alike attracts and unlike repel? By the early 20th century, mesmerist ideas of the healing properties in magnets had informed esoteric thinkers who theorized the magnetic power of thought, as well as a thriving market for, quote, lodestones that promise good luck to their possessors. Again, this is the cultural context in the 1930s, right? You got all these pseudo science, and this is one of them. This idea of magnetics has this esoteric power, right? The Magnetic Mineral Company advertised lodestones in newspapers from 1911 to 1914, with proprietor Frederick Nugent, who doubled as head of the Iridescent Order of Iris and the Occult School of Sciences. with as many as 1,800 dues-paying members. Was arrested for mail fraud with charges that he sold 12-cent stones for as much as $25 apiece. In addition to the stones themselves, Nugent promoted a book, The Lodestone, Mother of Magnetism, which provided ancient and modern philosophical and scientific knowledge concerning the stone's powers as well as their applications. Right? So we have this mail order occultic magnetic stone thingy that my man was killing them, right? With a $25 joint when it really costs like just pennies, right? So here's the how the advertisement went. Right? It says, "Is it your desire to have that strange, mysterious power that charms and fascinates men and women, shape their thoughts, control their destinies, and make you supreme master of every situation? Do you wish to know the secrets of magnetism? Learn how to win the friendship and love of others, gratify your ambitions, increase your income, dispense worry and trouble, banish domestic unhappiness, and develop a wonderful magnetic willpower that will enable you to overcome all obstacles to your success." Right? That's how they sold it. You know, that's how they sold it. They sold it like this. It's that the magnets have power over people. You know what I mean? MJ, you want to say something? Look, you grinning over here.
Now I'm just thinking of what if David Chappelle had got a hold of some of this material in one of his skits. But I mean, magnets, y'all, magnets.
But this gets incorporated in the YACOUB story. Again, we're looking at the source material here, right?
Yeah.
All right, so here we go. According to Nugent's advertisements, the lodestone reveals a long guarded, quote, dying message from Toussaint Louverture, noblest type of the African race, greatest general of history and leader of the 1791 Haitian Revolution. Somehow this guy gets involved now. The Haitian, a 1913 advertisement in the Freeman presented as an article by a, quote, special correspondent asserts that Lo Overture rose from obscurity to the heights of fame and defeated 30,000 European soldiers with the help of a stone that he always carried. Right? The power of this lodestone, like this is how the Haitians got their freedom, not because of black unity and great genius strategy from their leaders. No, no, no. The stone, the stone helped them get their freedom. Right. The ad also locates knowledge of magnetic stones among Moses and the Israelites, Greek philosophers, and settings such as China, Bengal, and Ethiopia. In particular, Renaissance with the lessons. The ad explains that, quote, there should be two stones, one positive, one negative, or two that attract each other. Gee, that sounds awfully familiar, right? The
It's
idea,
vibranium, bro.
that's my friend. There in Wakanda. Um, the idea is that the minerals will give to the person that personal magnetism, which is of such great importance to success in this world. While the Magnetic Mineral Company ad claims, quote, no one knows who discovered the lodestone, the lessons answer the question. Magnetic attraction was discovered by 6-year-old YACOUB, who vowed that he would make manifest his thought in reality. So this is again, we're looking at the source material of the YACOUB story. Theosophy and the pseudoscience of esoteric power of magnets. Right? There should be two stones, one positive, one negative. That's part of the YACOUB story. Right? Magnetism informed esoteric discussions of humans' mental power in which thought itself became magnetic. Chicago based occult publisher and entrepreneur William de Laurence, whose resonance with the nation's particular theology and Christology will be seen below, also writes in The Imminence of God, know thyself. You ever heard the 5% talking about I got knowledge of self?
Oh yeah, I done heard them talk about it. I done heard uh who was that? Pork Chop Ray Hagen's talk about it.
This is where it comes from. It
This
comes
is where it
from
comes from.
William de Laurence, who wait for it, is the white man. Dun, dun, dun.
Mm.
So let's keep going. Let's keep going. Um, this is a yeah. This is I think a quote from Delorance. There is inherent in the human soul a certain magnetic virtue, which is natural and proper, which acts in a very peculiar manner, i.e., magnetically or spiritually in a person or an object at a remote distance, and that more effectively and powerful than by any corporal assistance, and turns to the story of Jacob and Laban for biblical evidence. The successful manifestation of YACOUB's determined idea to create a race that, while physically and mentally weaker than original peoples, manages to rule the world becomes evidence in modern white supremacy. De Laurence writes of Jacob as a quote, deceitful, selfish, crouching brother with an unworthy man who, quote, succeeded by fraud and lying and was, quote, better versed in trickery and psychology than godly affairs. And he is not represented as a diviner or magician. In the lessons, Yaqub's grafted devils become masters of the world through tricknology, a science of power which apparently consists of using deception to create internal discord within communities, stealing, and an unexplained knowledge of how to master the original man. In the sixth and seventh book of Moses, also describes Moses' powers and feats in terms of, quote, magnetic occurrences, particularly calling attention to Moses' use of the rod and highlighting magnetism among the later Israelite prophets, such as Elisha, as a quote, remarkable instance of the magnetic influence in changing the nature and complexion of living objects. The text points to the story of Jacob and Laban, attributing Jacob's influence over the animal's colors as a quote, an application of the mysterious doctrine of magnetism. Now, this book, and in a few weeks, me and MJ, we're going to do a whole show on this book because Mr. De Laurence, with his book, the sixth and seventh book of Moses, is actually the backbone of many current iterations of black religions. I did recent not recently, but a while ago, me and Vocab Malone, we talked about the remixed theology of Hebrew Israelites,
Mm-hmm.
right? And how Rabbi Wentworth uses this book to create his spells.
Mm.
But it's not only the Hebrews that have used this European white occult magic. Many of the quote unquote black religions that people flock to now have this guy as their mainstay in their theology, and they don't even know it. All right. But again, this is the source material, right? That he believes that Moses had his ability based on magnetic power, and they use that and they cobble that together with the story of Jacob with the different animals and how the spots, the ones that have the spots, the ones that don't have the spots.
Mm-hmm.
They use then you add the lodestone, right? Magnetism. Then you add the root races of Blavatsky. You put it in the pot, and out comes Yakub, the big head scientist.
Magnets.
Magnets and madness. All right. Um, through the lessons do not come with a bibliography of named sources.
Oh.
They don't. They, of course not. They offer a number of thematic portals into currents of alternative religiosity available in 1930s Detroit. Magnetism and the power of thought, rejections of a transcendent mystery God, in favor of reconstructing divinity as a limitless human potential, emphasis on a vegetarian diet as critical to building one's personal divinity, Jesus redefined as a student of Eastern mysteries, the existence of civilizations on Mars and Mercury, communication with the dead, the development of distinct races as breeding projects by superior intellects, narrative of Moses as a master occultist, and portrayals of the Freemasons as a powerful ruling elite that withholds true knowledge from the masses. This was the milieu of Detroit in the 1930s. All of this was swarming around, and Farad very smartly, I would have to say, takes bits and pieces and creates this very interesting narrative of Yakub. It's easy and perhaps intuitive to argue for the lessons as an artifact of African American esotericism, reflecting the discursive field in which Fard and Elijah Muhammad operated to have been informed chiefly by movements such as Theosophy, New Thought, Mesmerism, Spiritualism, and speculative Freemasonry. This is the source material of Yakub and basically the wisdom, supreme wisdom lessons. It's Theosophy, New Thought, Mesmerism, Spiritualism, and speculative Freemasonry. Right? And guess what? None of these are African in origin. None of these things. All right.
Nada.
So, what's your thoughts on this piecemealed theology here, Mister Jackson?
Look, like I said, last year around this time, or at least just a little bit before Thanksgiving, me and you started taking a look at, uh, the Hermetic writings, and once again, we see the same players. We took a look at the uh, the lodge and the Masons. Once again, same folks behind that. We even took a look at some of the teachings behind Cometicism. Once again, the same folks are behind that. I think at this point, it's been established that the information, the underlying theological and philosophical underpinnings of each of these movements are fraudulent. And what's also funny to me is that many of them try to rely on the Bible for a little bit of legitimacy.
Right.
That's hilarious to me. Um, but I mean, there is no need to continue to pretend that any of these movements are legitimate. No, they're not. I mean, these people are a part of these movements for things other than good reasons. Uh, Part of it is self-esteem. Part of it is they might feel like these groups give them a sense of identity. But my hope and my prayer is that the church would get beyond the four walls and really point people to the biblical worldview that is able to answer these questions and also provide a grounding for identity, a grounding for dignity, and a grounding for purpose. But once again, such a vacuum that was there. I mean, you have guys like Farad and Elijah Muhammad just really filling in the gap. They're targeting men coming out of. I mean, it's interesting that they get a lot of men who come out of prison. That's
Mm-hmm.
why prison ministries are important,
Mm.
you know. But once again, we gotta move past trying to make church members and really look at making disciples, and that means to go out into the highways and byways and also the prisons and to be ready to combat this stuff.
Right.
That's my
Right.
soapbox.
No, that's so true. And let me move this. So we have an individual here by the name of, I guess, AFD. He says the story of Yakub is an allegory for the white race being developed through parthenogenesis. It is very African. Sumerian myths have stories of Lulu, and Southern African have these myths as well. Well, first of all, the way the story is taught is not taught as an allegory, sir. This is the origin. This is how the white man came to be, according to Farad. So it's not allegory. Two, I'm glad you brought up parthenogenesis because me and the sister Dinu from the Bodega Ladies are currently working on a show to deal with the so-called parthenogenesis. So hopefully you'll be in attendance for that. So yeah. So I just want to put that out there. So Yeah. So again, as we look and we look deeper into the source material, time and time again, we see that these things are not African. They're just not. Theosophy is not African. Now, does that mean that Christianity is true? No. Nothing that we shared today means that you should make Jesus Lord. So why am I bringing this up? Because many of us have left the church because we think we need a more authentic African experience, right? But the sad thing is, these African experiences aren't African at all. And in fact, one of the more genuine African experiences you can have is actually with the Bible. You know, quick here from my man, Truth Trauma Theology. This is actually to you, MJ. He says, when I listen to Farrakhan, he talks about how Christianity does not speak to the black experience the way NOI does. I think we have to connect before we correct. How do you suggest we engage? Great question, bro.
That is an excellent question. And I was talking to my mom just about the legacy of Malcolm X. And um, I believe that it was the devil's plan to take Malcolm X out because this is just, I don't have any evidence for this, but I believe that had he lived, it's a very strong possibility he could have came around to the Christian worldview. Um, but uh, he did believe that religion provided a strong grounding for ethics. And so a lot of times what Farrakhan and what Malcolm X did in his earlier years with the Nation of Islam was, take advantage of the areas of Christian teachings where it said that you are to pray for your enemies, where you are to turn the other cheek and things like that. And they would use issues like that, and also attempting to say that Christianity was the white man's religion, that it didn't have an answer for black people. They would try to use that as a reason why Christianity was useless, pragmatically speaking, um, for black people. I think number one that in African Americans in today's day and age have pragmatic and ethical needs. We saw the marches with George Floyd. We saw the marches um, with Michael Brown. The um, even some riots. We saw what has happened in terms of more light being shed on some of the police killings um, since cell phones have become better. Uh, I mean, we've seen the statistics on um, the school to prison pipeline, mass incarceration, things like that. Christianity speaks to that, and so we right then and there we do have a connection um, based on the fact that God is a God of justice. The image of God is one of the core doctrines that we can establish a point of contact that African Americans were made in God's image and possess inherent value and dignity. We can also look at the history of this country uh, and point out that yes, Christianity was abused and used to oppress a certain group of people. But we can also look at our ancestors, like Frederick Douglass, who were wise enough and filled with the Holy Spirit and God's word to point out that the Christianity of this land was different from the Christianity of Christ.
Right.
And if we translate that over to today, that the Christian nationalism was different
Uh
from
oh.
the
Uh oh.
Christianity of
Uh oh.
Christ. And so you look, there's a point of contact that we can make. And
Hmm.
we might anger some people on the other side of the aisle, but when you understand that Jesus Christ is king and you present the gospel in such a way that Jesus Christ did not just die for us to go to heaven. He didn't die just for us to get fire insurance, but Jesus Christ died to not only take care of our sins, but also to make everything right. In Colossians, it talks about how Jesus is reconciling all things to himself through the blood of his cross, both things seen, both things in heaven, and both things on earth. And that's a reconciliation that's brought about through warfare, because Jesus took care of the cosmic powers of sin and death
Hmm.
and demonic cosmic powers. But he also took care of our own personal issues and reconciled us to each other. So once we present Jesus as king, a literal king with actual political power, we can see life for truly what it is, and we can present a more robust gospel that will touch every area of human existence. And that's good for black people, that's good for white people, that's good for everybody.
And when just make sure people don't misconstrue what you're saying. When he's talking about this political phenomenon, he's not saying Democrat or Republican. He's not talking conservative or liberal, right? He's talking about Jesus, right? That's if there's any quote unquote political party we need to be a part of, it's the kingdom of Jesus, right? Now, if you tend to lean liberal and conservative on certain subjects, fine. But we in the UA do not tether our theology to any political party. Just want to put that out there. We're neither a Democrat. We're not donkeys or elephants. We follow the lamb. Okay.
I like to label myself as a Christian radical.
I don't think you have to do that. I think people already labeled you that already, bro. So I don't
Yeah,
think you have to
yeah,
do that for yourself.
yeah.
But real quick here, as a bonus, since our good friend here, let me see where. See if I can find this. All right, real quick here. Let's see if I can make this big. All right. Scientific racism, sometimes race realism or human biodiversity, race biology or racial biology, is the pseudoscientific belief that empirical evidence exists to support or justify racism, racial inferiority, or racial superiority. Alternatively, it is the practice of classifying individuals of different phenotypes or genotypes into discrete races. Historically, it received credence in the scientific community, but is no longer considered scientific. Right? In fact, let me see what else here, real quick. All right, this is from UNESCO. After the end of the Second World War and the occurrence of the Holocaust, scientific racism in theory and action was formally denounced, especially in UNESCO's anti-racist statement, quote, the race question. This is 1950. The biological fact of race and the myth of race should be distinguished. For all practical social purposes, race is not so much a biological phenomenon as a social myth. The myth of race was created has created an enormous amount of human and social damage in recent years, as taken a heavy toll in human lives and caused untold suffering. Right? So, and what the lessons were doing was actually using this, but putting it in kente cloth.
Mm.
Right? That's what the story of YACOUB was basically doing. It was just taking a page out of scientific racism and using it for its own purposes. Right? So, so yeah, yeah. So I want to thank everyone, those who gave the super chat. Definitely appreciate it. Um, Carter here says his three autobiographies are groundbreaking and must read. Frederick Douglass was that dude.
That man.
Yes, yes, indeed, yes, indeed. So, but yeah. So again, if you don't want to follow Jesus, I mean, you're free not to. But what we're doing is we're knocking off excuses from the table when we have to talk about Jesus. You can't use YACOUB. I'm leaving because I want authentic African, theology. Well, you're not gonna find it here in the lessons. What you're gonna find is mesmerism, theosophy. That's what you're gonna find. So if you want an authentic African experience, come back to Jesus. Come back to Jesus. Now, of course, we don't follow Jesus because of any ethnic reason. We follow it because Christianity best purports with reality. But it also happens to, Jesus was not a white man. Now
Mm-mm.
he wasn't Shaka Zulu, but he wasn't Brad Pitt either. Right? I just want to put it out there. So Christianity is for everyone. The gospel is for everyone. It's not a black thing. It's not a white thing. It's a being like Christ thing. You know, a man here says we basically make Jesus into whatever we need to be for us. Christian nationals and black religions both feel the feel to toughen Jesus up for our political, economic, or sociological agendas. I agree. That's
I
what people
agree.
do. 100%.
One group believes that Jesus was a black revolutionary, and the other group believes that Jesus was a libertarian.
Right. Right.
And look, just let's submit ourselves to the text. Yes, Jesus absolutely presented the kingdom in a countercultural fashion. Absolutely. He said to love your neighbor as you love yourself. He said, pray for your enemies. He said, turn the other cheek. Now, a lot of people have I was going at it with a brother, and I wasn't like going at it, but when I worked at General Motors on the assembly line, these discussions would come up. And this was a black brother. He had a real issue with turning the other cheek. But if we read what was being said and we understand hermeneutics and the cultural context, we'll understand what Jesus was saying. Jesus was not advocating um, that we allow folks to kill us, to do violence to us per se. Um, he was talking about insults. Um, but if we allow the text to speak for itself, Jesus is also the same one that says that a millstone should be tied around your neck and you drowned in the ocean if you cause one of these little ones to stumble. You know, Jesus was also the same guy who told the parable about the unjust judge. And he said, how much more will God give his people justice when they cry out to him? So, you know, the Bible is beautiful. The biblical worldview is robust, and it really can handle everything that that comes our way if we allow it to.
Hmm. Amen to all that. To all of that. And that's why, we just want to make it very clear for people. If you don't want to follow God, just say that.
Good luck living life.
Just say that. You know? I'm gonna give you the secret sauce of how you could defeat every urban apologist. Ready? I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna tell you this is what you say. I don't care if the Bible's true or not. Jesus is real, don't care. I'm gonna live the life that I want to live, and when I die, I'll deal the situation then. There's nothing we can say about that.
We're gonna shake the dust off, fam.
I mean, you're wrong, but there's nothing we can say. Like, that's honest. It's wrong, but you're honest. But when you bring up this other stuff, well, this and that, and the Council of Nicaea, and this and that, like, nah, bro, like, no. So what we're doing is clearing the table so that we could just have an honest conversation, right? So MJ, before we leave, what can we expect from you in the immediate future, sir?
Oh no, I think I'm gonna release a podcast between today and Sunday, just talking about what I'm thankful for. Uh, I'm thankful for you. I'm thankful for Chris Bryan Samuel, Adam Coleman, Sister Michelle, Shawnee, and I don't know. I moved out of Texas. I got, got married and things like that. And it's been quite a bit of a distance between my biological family. But it's just like, when you are a part of a Christian family, God will indeed give you brothers and sisters who you can be very close to. So I'm just really thankful for the love that you guys show a brother, and just the wisdom um, that I'm able to glean from you guys. And so I think I'm gonna just talk about that a little bit.
Well, bro, we love you right back. I mean, we're grateful that you're on our side, and I mean, you're just an amazing person. I've definitely learned so much from you and so many others from the UA community. And it is a community, even though we don't get to physically be in the same room all the time. But well, it's happening actually more and more now.
Yeah.
But on a more consistent nature, I mean. But it's great. It's great to have such like-minded people. It's like being with a bunch of mutants. We all have our particular superpowers, right? And oh man, I learned so much from just being around you guys. I feel like I'm around superheroes when anytime I get to speak with you guys, honestly. And bro, you are an amazing man of God. I am better because I have you in my life. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
I feel like I have a reason to come to New York.
Oh
Other than that, I would never come to New York.
man. So let's end the bromance right now.
Yes, sir.
Um, so, but no, it's facts though. We love each other greatly.
Yeah.
It's not just for YouTube. We talk almost every day behind the
Mhm.
scenes. You know what I mean? So, but with that being said, it's MJ Jackson and BK signing off. Peace.